Okay, Dave, November 2011.
Yes.
So what are the market conditions? What have you observed the last few months?
Yeah, well, the third quarter was a big improvement over the same quarter last year, big improvement. You might remember, I hate to keep going back to this, but you might remember that in June of 2010, the last tax credit expired.
Right.
And that was followed by the most difficult 6 months of the second half of 2010 that we saw really since this whole episode began back in around 2007. So since then, now we're in the third quarter of 2011, and we're now comparing what happens this year to that low ebb last year. And so as a result, activity's up between 30 and 35% from a year ago, and that's a big improvement. Feels a lot better. The market is following a very normal seasonal curve this year for the first time in probably 3 years. And so we can really see what's happening now. We really can kind of get our arms around it. We can see what sort of the organic level of demand is. And it seems to be slowly improving. I'd say that conditions are marginally better now than they were even at the first part of the year. Starting at about Easter, toward late April, we saw things kind of take an uptick. And since then, things have been getting a lot better. So we're feeling good about things.
And you also mentioned in your newsletter that the showing to offer ratios has changed a bit. So
yeah, it's interesting. There? It's a different buyer than we saw a year ago. When the tax credit was in effect, we were seeing I want to get the best price buyer. I want to get a deal buyer. And so they weren't necessarily motivated by finding a place to live. They were motivated by trying to take advantage of the circumstances. And so because of that, what we saw was a lot of buyers that were looking at lots and lots and lots of properties, and if everything wasn't just right, they didn't buy it. They didn't want to do it. Now we're seeing people that are in the market just because they know conditions are generally favorable, interest rates are low, but they want to buy a house, and they want to do it now. So they're not looking at as many houses. When they find the right house, they're buying it. And so we've seen it's on average, the number of showings per offer internally here is down by a couple, which makes a difference. So buyers are committing more quickly.
So the buyers still have opportunities out there, it sounds like.
Oh, the buyers have tremendous opportunities out there. In fact, we're still hearing a lot of stories of people that say, well, I want to wait till prices get to the bottom. I don't want to buy into a falling market. Right. We understand that. That's clear, that's standard human psychology. But what you really want to do is buy when conditions are most favorable. And those conditions are right now. Right. I think a lot of times people, there's been so much attention paid to indices of housing prices recently. And what you have to realize is those are nothing more than just sort of aggregates of all kinds of individual decisions, individual buyers and individual sellers. And the question that the buyer should be asking themselves is, when are conditions best to buy? And right now you have still relatively depressed demand and still very high supply, and those are favorable conditions. Once demand picks up a little bit and supply goes down a little bit, those conditions will be less favorable, and the price you'll be able to negotiate will not be as favorable. So if you want to get that good price, do it now. That's really the message. I realize a lot of people won't take that advice. We've been giving that advice for a long time. Yes. We've been right all the way along.
That's right.
But nonetheless, certainly this has dragged out longer than we thought it would. And it's going to take a while longer before conditions get back to what we would consider normal.
So sellers, though, still face some competition in the market, but there have been a few changes. So what's happening with sellers?
Well, with sellers, the problem that sellers still face is that there's just simply too much inventory on the market. In fact, even despite the uptick in demand, if you look at the number of months of inventory and compare it to demand over a 12-month period, we have more months of inventory today than we've had probably since this whole thing started. So that creates a challenge for sellers. It does. And as we've talked with our agents about this, they all consistently say, you can do everything right. You can price it right. You can have it pristine. And you still don't really know which ones are going to go and which ones aren't. Because there's probably, your odds of selling in this market are probably no better than 50% overall, if you look at the number of new listings that come on the market and compare that to the number of sales. That's a tough environment. It's a very abnormal environment. And until inventories come down, we're not going to see that change. So sellers still have a challenge, no question.
And the mortgage market, as we discussed, it's still very attractive for buyers, and there's recently been a change for sellers.
Yeah, well, the change for sellers is that the government, I think this was a very wise decision on their part, has chosen now to ignore on a refinance what the current balance is on the loan
Right.
relative to the price of the house.
Mhm.
This isn't as big a problem for us here in Madison as in some other part. I mean, there are parts of the country where people have, 150%
Right.
loan-to-value ratios. It's, they're way underwater. And previously, the government would not allow you to refinance if your house was too far underwater. I think that was a mistake.
Right.
Because there are a lot of people that should be able to take advantage of these low interest rates. So they've now decided to ignore that. So it should make more sellers who want to refinance eligible to do so. And to the extent that that brings some inventory off the market of people that were considering selling or feeling that they had to sell, that's a good thing. So we're pleased to see that. The interest rate environment remains extremely favorable, record interest rates.
Right.
And the Federal Reserve has made it clear that they're going to keep them that way for an extended period of time. So the cost of ownership will never be lower than it is right now if you're looking to get into the marketplace. What I think we're feeling, kind of to sum it up, is that the process of recovery has started. It's going to take some time. I think normal, which would be inventories probably about 20% lower than they are and demand about 20% higher than it currently is still probably going to take a couple years to achieve, absent some other intervention or event that would move things along. But it's become pretty clear that this is the level of demand we have. Steve Murray, who's a gentleman, a national real estate observer that I really admire and a good friend, has predicted that he thinks housing activity will rise by about 2 to 5% a year each year. Very, very variable by market, of course, but that's sort of the national trend until we get back to normal, which he also predicts is about 20% above the level that we have right now. So we're not that far away. But at that rate, it's going to take a couple of years, probably 2-3 years to get there. But the slow, steady process of improvement is here, and that's a good thing. So we're feeling good about that.
So it sounds like the cost of renting is actually going up.
The cost of renting has gone way up. In fact, the vacancy rates are the lowest they've ever been here in Madison. And so rents are on the rise, and it's making the rent-to-own
Right.
equation even more favorable. It's heavily favoring owning right now. But again, buyers just have to be able to kind of do that math. And of course, be ready to own for the long run. This is not a market where you're going to buy today and sell tomorrow and make a lot of money.
Right.
In fact, healthy real estate markets are never that way. I think that was one of the things that we learned through this, is that when that's happening, you've got an unhealthy market. Right. But if you're looking to own and own for the long run, this is an absolutely fabulous time to stop renting and start owning. No question about it.
Great. Thanks much, Dave.
Yeah, thanks, Jim.